No one else is standing up for what's right. People are going to stand up for what's right on their own. It's not ideal, but this is the situation that we're in.
I can't believe that this is where we're at, but if this is where we're at, this is where I'm going to be.
This segment is brought to you by Eastside Weight Loss Clinic. I'm down 37 pounds on the program, and I lost most of that weight in just 2 months. There's no prepackaged meals, no counting calories, no drugs or injections. Schedule your free 15-minute consultation today at eastsideweightlossclinic.com. So we talked on the show last week, one of the big stories that we talked about is Jason Roth, Seattle's homeless landlord, finally getting his house back. But at the same time, there's arguably a much worse case that has been playing out in the city of Bellevue that we haven't talked about so far on the show. We might have mentioned it in passing on one or two episodes. But it has to do with a landlord whose name is Jaskaran Singh and his tenant, and I use that term very loosely because it's just a squatter at this point, a guy named Sang Kim, who has a history of doing this, of getting someone to rent a house to him and then not paying. And Sang Kim has been there now, and this is in Bellevue, for 2 years. 2 years without paying rent. And the backlog and all the issues with the system and protections for tenants that Jason Roth ran into in Seattle, the landlord in this case is also running into these roadblocks to getting this guy who hasn't paid rent in 2 years thrown out. So here's the thing. Law-abiding, hardworking people are fed up. They've had enough. Landlords who are trying to provide a service to their community, yes, are they, in some cases making money? Of course they are. Why else would you buy an investment property and then rent it out at a loss? That's not happening. But you have these relatively, I think small, mid-sized landlords who are really struggling under the weight of this. So in Bellevue, they've had a freak enough of this. They've had enough of this guy who is going into these homes and stealing. That's what this is. This is theft. So what happened over the weekend? Well, a huge group of citizens showed up in front of this house to essentially try to shame this squatter, Sang Kim, into leaving. Our friend Jonathan Cho was there covering it.
Get out, commit! Get out, commit!
How is the Korean community interpreting what's happening here?
They are not aware of this. They're usually landlord or hardworking business people. They would never imagine a Korean descendant taking advantage of this poor, broken system like this and embarrass not only his family, but entire community. So I was chanting, if you're not going to pay, you shouldn't stay there. And I also called them out as a con man. 사기꾼. 사기꾼 means con man in Korean. What I'm going to do is I'm going to provide high-resolution picture of them and ask all the Korean medias to post this on their newsletter and online website and actually have him get famous. Every restaurant he goes, every Korean restaurant he goes, every Korean market he goes, so everybody recognizes him. That way, he's not only just embarrassed to move out of that place, but move out of the state once and for all.
He's not welcome in Washington anymore?
He shouldn't be.
Yeah, that's our friend Jonathan Cho reporting for Discovery Institute. You can also follow him at Cho Show. Just crazy stuff. And I was watching more of the video. And look, yeah, they had photos of this guy out there. They were outside the house. I think a couple people tried to go up and knock on the door, and they didn't make a secret of it. The goal was and is to shame him into leaving the house, giving this small landlord his rental property back, who's out like $80,000, and to shame this guy into doing what's right because every system has let them down. Every system has failed the person who's not doing anything wrong. Again, just like you had in the Jason Roth case, you've got free attorneys for the tenant/squatters who go in there and they delay these eviction cases as far as they can do it. And even when it gets to the point of eviction, then you have this huge backlog in actually executing the eviction if you have someone who's unwilling to leave. So this is what it's come down to, is citizens who've had enough who are having to get together and show up and just try to embarrass the guy so much that he ends up leaving. Now, I'll tell you, and I saw this and I was like, so proud. You know who was there over the weekend? Our friend Wes Jones with sellwithwes.com, one of our wonderful show sponsors, but he was there because this landlord is a friend of his. And he has been, talking to this landlord a lot over the last 2 years about what's going on. And this is also the neighborhood that Wes Jones happens to live in. So Wes was there at the protest. So we thought, Wes, might as well have him in and talk about what went down. Wes, this is weird. Usually we've never had you on for a news interview before.
I know. I can't believe I'm here either.
Well, it's different. Now I can be hard on you.
Oh, I'm gone. I've seen that side
Yes.
of you. I thought we were friends.
We are friends.
Yeah.
So this is wild.
Yeah,
I've never seen
absolutely.
anything like that.
I've never seen anything like it either, which is one of the reasons that I absolutely had to be there.
Yeah. Well, you have a relationship with the landlord, correct?
I do. Jimmy is a friend. He's not only is he a friend, he is a neighbor of mine. He lives about 4 blocks away from me. So this is happening in Bellevue. This is happening in my neighborhood of Woodridge. And this is not something that just happens in Seattle because you hear about all the crazy things happening over there. It's happening in Bellevue. It's happening in Redmond. It happens in Tacoma. So if it can happen in Bellevue, of all places, it can happen anywhere.
And this wasn't like the first step is let's bring the whole community there to protest. This has been a long ordeal for him.
This has been a process. Jimmy is going on 2 years of this madness, and he has gone through all of the steps. This guy, his tenant. It's a squatter. Let's be honest at this point. His squatter moved in almost 2 years ago. He paid the first month's rent, he paid the last month's rent, and that was it. I'm pretty sure that there was some help from, the housing justice program along the way that got a couple of months' rent. But Jimmy's behind $80,000 in rent. That's absolutely crippling to somebody. Jimmy, he's a guy. He's a small landlord. He's not a super wealthy guy. Like this is a problem, and this is putting him in a terrible position.
You first started telling me about this around the time we were talking about Jason Roth, Seattle's quote unquote homeless landlord, who just last week finally had a resolution. Not ideal, but an eviction was served. He doesn't get any of the money back that was, taken from him in free rent over a year. And the squatter, I like that term better than tenant, isn't going to get an eviction on his record, but he was able to work to get some sort of resolution to get that guy out of his house. What's stopping Jimmy from being able to get resolution in this?
Just the process. King County is so backed up.
Yeah.
And here's what I've learned about through Jimmy's, I'm learning things too, through Jimmy. You've got, the Housing Justice Project, which is funded by the state and by King County. Their only goal is to kick the can down the road for these tenants. It's not to help them, these tenants or these squatters. It's not to help them get into housing that is affordable for them. It's to get them to stay in place. So you've got to be really careful. You have to have all your I's dotted, all your T's crossed, because if you miss one of those, they're going to get you to the bottom of the list again, and that eviction hearing that you had is going to get postponed. That's what's happening to Jimmy right now. There is a massive backlog in King County. In my opinion, they need to work through that immediately. Mm-hmm. Like that needs to happen now. They are months behind, and there's really nothing that people can do or landlords can do outside of try some settlement like you were just talking about. And I'm sure that has been tried here. My opinion is based on how this guy has been acting. He is playing the game to stay there as long as he can because his name's already out there. His credit's going to be trashed. So what is his incentive to move?
Mm-hmm. Now, let me ask devil's advocate.
Yeah.
There's some people calling it like vigilante justice. You were there. Was it harassment of this man? Did it go too far?
Oh, Brandi, this was just another peaceful protest. But it really was. It was peaceful. It was peaceful. There was about 100 people that were there. Everybody was there in good faith in support of Jimmy or in support of small landlords' right, in support of not squatting. Nothing got out of control. There was there were some signs. There was one bad actor there. Looks like it was housing justice or some type of liberal advocate that was getting in people's faces.
Shocking that that's the side that was causing a problem.
I'm so surprised. He was in people's faces, about anti-doxing laws and breaking the law for doxing. I even saw him getting after one of Jimmy's kids. It was disgusting.
But here's the thing about it is like I look at that and I'm like, it's sad it came to that.
It is. It's
really sad it came to a bunch of community members having to rally outside this house, like telling a squatter to leave. I mean, are we going to see more of that? Because to me, this is theft. Mm-hmm. This should be felony theft, in my opinion. You should be sent to prison. It's like theft by taking. Like this man's taking
People
income.
go to jail
Yeah.
for a lot less, for stealing a lot less. So I'm
100%.
absolutely with you. This is theft. This is legal theft based on the laws that we are working with within Washington State. Is this what it's going to come to from moving forward? I don't know. But if this helps move the ball forward, then I hope that it does, because it was peaceful. It was community members, family members, friends showing support and drawing awareness. And what I got out of talking to the few politicians that were there is that they were saying, this is what you are going to need to do. You are going to have to shame the legislature into change by making these stories public. So if this is what it takes, this is what it takes.
And in cases like Jason Roth, where he finally got the squatter out of his house, but there's no eviction on his record, so he might try to do it to someone else. But he has now been convicted in the court of public opinion. Like, that guy's face is out there. You Google his name, and maybe that's the only punishment there is. Because I look at it as the same, and you had mentioned, like, people go to jail for far less. People's face get put on the news for far less. Like, I think of my friend David Rose over at Fox 13, and they're looking for a suspect in something. It's like, here's his mugshot.
Yeah.
To me, that's what I see. This is like a guy who is stealing from someone, and his face is on the news. And I just don't feel bad for him.
I don't feel bad for him either, especially since this is the second time in a row that he has done this. This guy is a serial squatter. He has made a business model out of stealing free rent from landlords.
Insane. So let me end with this just as advice for people, because you are also a landlord yourself.
That's right.
I mean, is there any advice you can give to landlords big and small to try to protect themselves from a situation like this?
It's tough, but you have to do your screening. And it's sad to say that landlords can't take chances anymore. And mom and pop landlords like Jimmy, like myself, we were the last people that would be able to take a chance on somebody. And it becomes more and more clear that that's harder to do. The one piece of advice I'd give other landlords, especially the mom and pop landlords, is don't just check with their current tenant, or their current landlord, check with the previous landlord. Because if you've got a problem, like the Airbnb one that you were talking about, is it Jason?
Jason, yeah.
Yeah, that one. Okay, so that current landlord, he can't give a negative, landlord review. But if he had any issues with the previous landlord, for these people who are serially offending, that's where you're going to find that out. So check with the previous landlord, not just their current landlord, because that current landlord could have some incentive to get them out the door.
Oh, 100%. It's like, yeah, he's great. Take him. So was that your first protest?
That was my first protest.
Oh my God, that was Wes's first act of civil unrest.
That's absolutely. I don't know. Was it civil unrest? It felt very peaceful.
Civil disobedience.
I don't know. There was a part of me, Brandi, was like, oh my gosh, as a real estate agent in the community, maybe this is not the place that I should be. It was like that took about 2 seconds of brain space for me. I'm like, this is my friend, and this is wrong, and I'm going to be there to support him.
Oh, it makes me even more proud to have you as a sponsor on our show.
Absolutely.
I'm like, I knew Wes was a cool guy. I mean, it comes down to this. When no one else is standing up for what's right, people are going to stand up for what's right on their own. It's not ideal, but this is the situation that we're in.
I can't believe that this is where we're at, but if this is where we're at, this is where I'm going to be.
If this is where we're at, this is where I'm going to be. I love it. And I think it's great. It's unfortunate it came to this, right? But the fact is that, okay, what's the other option? Just rolling over and saying, we're okay, perfectly fine, living in a state that gives so much protection to tenants that someone can live in someone else's property for free. I mean, stealing tens of thousands of dollars from them in lost wages. And then that we're going to be fine with that and we're just going to roll over? No, hell no, we're not going to roll over. That doesn't make any sense. It's interesting because I saw he was talking about the counter protester who was there, who I'm actually very familiar with, Bennett Hasselton. He is at a lot of individual events. He protested, for instance, Referendum 101 signature gathering efforts. He counter-protested the sign waving we did for Sheriff Adam Fortney in Snohomish County. I've always found him to be a pretty reasonable guy. He was one of the initial, I think, 6 people arrested for blocking Interstate 5, but then his charge was eventually dropped. And so I don't know if he just didn't do anything illegal. I've never found him to be too terribly out of control, but he commented on our episode today, Bennett did, He said, I was there at the Bellevue rally and multiple people trespassed on the house property to put their protest signs on his lawn or to bang on his door. The police threatened to arrest me if I went onto the lawn to remove the protest signs that the protesters had put there. Got it all on GoPro. So that's the claim he's making. He says, my position was not to support the tenant, but rather that the whole event seemed to be in violation of Washington's anti-doxing law. Nobody seemed to have a good answer to that. Look, one of the things that I say to that, and again, this is Bennett's version of events, and he says he got it all on GoPro. One of the things I say to that, and I kind of mentioned it with Wes Jones, how many times do you see someone who's wanted? Like on Fox 13, David Rose, and on his social media, he's constantly putting out pictures of, surveillance video of someone who, stole a moving truck, or someone who went in and ransacked a business. And we have no issue with that, of that person who is accused of breaking the law. There's video of them doing it. We can blast them all over the news, and that's somehow not doxing, putting their face out there. But when it comes to someone who has stolen, let's be clear about this. He has stolen in excess of $80,000 from this small landlord. He somehow is owed some measure of protection? I don't think so. I reject that. If he doesn't want his name and his face out there, then he shouldn't be stealing from a landlord who has, invested in a property to try to help make a living off of it. So yeah, I just reject the fact that it's doxing to point out that someone is breaking the law. And also, the left complains about doxing when it's convenient for them, but the masters of doxing people who they don't agree with politically, who haven't done anything else wrong, is the left. And so, well, look, if these people want to take a page out of that playbook for this purpose, I'm totally fine with it.